So welcome to our latest episode of Rebels of the Heart. We're excited for the conversation, and I'm even more excited about the guests we have joining us today for this conversation on what I'll consider back to basics, the foundation of how this episode and series started around empathetic leadership. And I think the topic is relevant and appropriate today more than it's ever been. And we're going to jump in just a few moments. So thanks for being here with us. So welcome to Rebels of the Heart, the topic of empathetic leadership and how that's relevant to building connections, building amazing teams, building trust, and ultimately creating high performance organizations. And it's very appropriate. So with that, I'm going to welcome our guests, Artie, Lindsay, and Susanna. And I'm going to allow each of you to tell us a bit about yourselves, your journey to be here, and how this topic is relevant for you. And we will jump into the conversation. So welcome, Artie.
So I'm Artie Nathan. I'm an old HR guy, spent 30 years in the gaming industry, had 55,000 employees in Nevada, Atlantic City, Mississippi, and China, and enjoyed every year of it. When I left there, I became a professor at UNLV, and now I'm just an executive coach. I have an executive recruiting company and an online training company, and it is just a real pleasure, Derek, to be here today.
We're honored and pleasure to have you here, Artie. So welcome. And we'll go over to Lindsay.
Hi, everyone. Lindsay Garrido. I have been in HR for 20 years now, started back in college, got my degree. I was one of the few who kind of knew early on they wanted to do HR. Started my career in photo finishing when we all used to have a roll of film in our cameras and drop off our pictures at the labs, and then moved into healthcare, spent about 5 years in home care, that moved to a large outpatient medical organization, and then have spent the last 11 months in hospitality working for a really large country club here in Westchester County, New York. I also volunteer with SHRM and also for our local chapter. I'm on the board, and so I serve as Emerging Professionals Chair. So a lot of what I like to do outside of my full-time job is to mentor career professionals, particularly in HR, and just help them grow in their career, bring them opportunities to network and to connect and to learn. And so really proud of some of the work I've done there, built a mentorship program. And so some of that is kind of always weaved through what I do. Is I really care about helping people be their best selves and to thrive. And I think that our conversation today is exciting because it's about building connections, and that's so important in what we do. So looking forward to our conversation today.
Likewise, we're happy you're here. Thanks for joining us, Lindsay. To Rebels. And Susanna.
Okay, hello everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Very humbled to be with a group of such a knowledgeable and experienced human resources team right here, panelists. I'm with Legacy Vacation Resorts. I am the corporate director of talent and purpose. I have been in HR for about 20 years and in hospitality for about 25. So always, within different areas of the hospitality, but it's always, customer service and tourism. I've moved here a while ago, and I've been in HR and been in every area, recruiting, the labor relations. And one of the things that I'm most, I guess, passionate is to how the empathy and the people really changing the trajectory of just having, employees, but, who they are and what they do. So I really look forward to learning from Art and Lindsay, and from you too, Derek. Let's see what we can do.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of fun here. So welcome to the show. So again, for our audience, I'm Derek Lunston. I'm the President and Chief Culture Officer of Life Guides, which is a platform that connects people for sharing their life experiences, their wisdom, and their empathy through a wide array of life experiences and challenges. And I have the great privilege to be the moderator of Rebels of the Heart, which has now been 4 years of episodes. And we've been doing this every month and had amazing leaders from all different industries and categories that have joined us. So welcome to that amazing alumni network, to our 3 guests here, and to all of our guests who are joining us here live, and then we'll watch this recording. So we're going to jump into it. So again, this topic of empathetic leadership, is actually the foundation of how Rebels started. I mentioned in the introduction, it's back to basics in some extent, but it's the essence of when you think back to pre-COVID, that topic was not as thrust into the forefront and mainstream as it has become over the last few years, and particularly during that time. I'd love for each of you to share a bit about your journey and your story around empathetic leadership and how it served you in your career, as well as how it's serving you now. And I'd say that's part one of the question. And part two is, we hear some pushback right now on this topic, even, which is surprising that we've almost gone to the other direction, that we've become too empathetic, and it's actually becoming kind of a polarizing topic. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well, kind of two parts. So how it served you and how it served your team, and just this cultural conversation that's happening right now. I personally don't believe that narrative, but I would like to hear from you as experts on this topic. So any of you could take that question. Again, there's no rules here. There's no order. Feel free to run with it as you wish.
So I'd like to kick this off because as an old guy, I started in HR in the early 70s. And so I'm a baby boomer. And I worked for guys who were, people that were out of the greatest generation. And you got to remember, back then, companies had it set up that you leave your problems at the door. If you've got a problem, don't bring it to work. And then it evolved. When I was at Cornell at the ILR school, I worked for a professor who started the ILR Employee Assistance Project, and he developed that concept. And so companies went from leave your problems at the door to, if you got a problem, we're going to send you to the EAP people.
Yeah.
In both instances, managers were hands off, got nothing to do with it, and they didn't even want to deal with it. And so they didn't develop any of those empathetic skills, and the companies didn't want them to develop them anyways. And so you figure that went on and on and on. And a lot of those people are still in the workforce. They really were still in the workforce when COVID hit. And as Derek said, COVID said, hey, we got to start caring about people. And, we got emotional intelligence became the byword. And all of these managers were flat-footed, like, I don't know what to do. I mean, that scares me. I don't want to deal with that. And so that's the history of where we've gotten to today. And it's interesting to have that perspective on things, because if companies maintain that old attitude, this concept is not yet in there. And workplace cultures, I think, today require that people have a lot of caring and empathy. That's my 2 cents.
Nice, Artie.
I think that for me, being in HR for 20 years, you learn what you learn in school. I have both a degree in HR and have done my certifications. So there's that body of knowledge that you learn, but then there's that important soft skill of empathy that you see as so important in the work you do as an HR professional. But then for those of us who become leaders ourselves, and also the leaders that we have influence over and help to coach and help them in sort of leading their teams. So for me, it's always been about that connection and that trust, and that I need to feel that in who I am working for. And likewise, I want my team to feel that in who is working for me. And I think that ultimately that helps us to connect with one another and get through the tough times, get through the trenches, and understand that we are there to support each other. And I think that that's what we then see in successful leaders, is they're able to build those connections with their team members and understand that we all are going through something. I think the pandemic highlighted that for people and really magnified that. But that existed way before, and it's here to stay and will forever be, because we're all humans and that's part of life. So I think it's really sad if people are starting to say we're being too empathetic, because I think that that's the wrong way to view it. And employees of our organizations, they're expecting it. They're expecting us to care about them and to support them. So I think that we are on the right direction for sure. And it's all about what we do, but also what our leaders do as well.
Thank you, Lindsay.
That's continuing with what Art and Lindsay say, I agree with that. I think empathy or connection, it's part of being human, and you cannot leave it outside the door when you come to work. I mean, if you come to work, you come your full self, or at least I will expect for you to come your full self. So one, you're connected to what you do, you're connected to the team you're working with, and you're connected to the company, but also at the same time, it has transcended to make sure that the company has strong values. So they create a good culture. So then at the same time, when the employees come in or the team members come in, they feel that they're working for something that they believe in as well. So I think that has been a transition that before it didn't exist. It was like you go to get your job, you get your paycheck, and that's it. And I think we've been able to transition it to a different level. And I think that's very important for newcomers too, in the culture sense. I totally disagree that we are getting too empathetic. I still don't think that we are at the level that we should be. We still have companies that absolutely don't bring that into their day-to-day life. I mean, and we say it all the time, but I don't think people really take it seriously. At work, sometimes you spend more time at the company or doing a job than what you do with your family members, and that what you do, at home or in your free time. So why can we be part, a whole part, and not just your persona, your work persona, but your whole persona, and be able to talk, and it's, yeah, you have personal life that maybe, they need, but you should have that open door or that open feeling that if they have a question or they just need to talk to somebody, you are there, you're available for that. And that's one thing that for us is very important when we hire leadership. That's one of the things that we ask. It's like, we need people that fit for the culture. So first of all, egos are out. But second, we need somebody that's going to be there with the team and talk to the team and be part of the team.
Yeah.
Because that's important for us.
So we all agree that we're not being too empathetic. Let's just establish that. So we agree there. But however, I think there is still a large subset of the work of the industry broadly that does not necessarily agree with that. Right? To your point, Artie, they want to go back to the way things were. It was easier, quote unquote, to not have to worry about emotional intelligence or those skills. We hear that oftentimes. And I think that one of the things that we're also hearing, kind of along the lines of what each of you shared in different ways, is this focus on how do we equip and provide people the education and training, particularly managers, those people that are the linchpin for transferring culture and transferring values and transferring performance and managing the performance of the organization. How do we, and what are you doing, or what have you seen done in that particular aspect? So obviously, to your point, Susanna, we can look to hire those people that have those skills, but because it is still arguably a minority of the population that has those skills, at least mastered them, how do we continue to upgrade our workforce to have these skills and to integrate those business skills with those emotional skills to get the outcomes we're achieving, or want to achieve, I should say. And so I'd love for each of you to riff on that a bit and share some stories within your organizations, within your career, because I know each of you has some. So,
well, it's interesting. There are about 5 generations working in the workplace today. So most managers are dealing with baby boomers down to Gen Zers, and there's some Gen Alphas coming on pretty quick here too. Sorry about that. And so I think companies and managers are forced to start thinking about this, because if you think about Gen Z people and millennials, they were raised by parents like me who wanted to do everything for their kids, especially the Gen Z kids. We made their schedules, we picked them up, we drove them places, we did everything for them. Whatever they wanted, we took care of it for them. And that's their life view when they're coming into the workforce. And so whether companies or managers like it or not, it's an expectation of the people you're hiring. And if you ignore that, then you're going to have problems with not only recruiting, but retention. And so I think it's important that we identify these generational needs to our managers. And it's also important that we start to train them about emotional intelligence. I don't think that that's a natural topic that people understand. And I've seen it on lots of organizations. When you introduce it, they say, what do you mean? And, you boil it down, it says, you got to care about your people. And that's never changed. In the 45 years I've been doing this, it has never changed. And the more people care, the more their employees care about the business and the customers, and it makes it successful. So this is an easy topic, but I think we have to introduce it. We have to give them workshops and exercises to practice it. And then we got to make it part of their performance evaluations, how well they're doing with that subject.
I think we also have to model it, right? We also have to show them part of how we can help leaders be more empathetic and help them understand the importance of it is by modeling it for them and doing it to them ourselves. So I try to emulate that when I'm speaking with people and taking that time to hear them and make sure that I'm acknowledging what they're telling me and even thanking them for sharing something if they've decided to confide in me with something personal or traumatic for them, and then be there for them and ask the questions and ask them how I can support them. And then I hope that by displaying that myself, others will then start to really feel that and really feel how that made them feel and how that can be so impactful in the ways that they interact with their colleagues, their team members, whoever it may be.
Yeah, training can do so much. I mean, you can train people, but if they're not actively taking it into place or being guided, so having one-on-ones, that's something that we push for leadership that have a good understanding of emotional intelligence, have one-on-one with the, line level managers and really work through and say, how would you reacted to this? How would you react differently? Or just, being for the leadership, everybody looks up to somebody, right? So, and everybody's looking at how your manager reacts to this, how they, and I think when they get to see it, it's contagious, but the training and for them to understand when we talk about AI, that's like, so that's something not new. It's always existed, but now everybody's talking about it because it has become a necessity, a skill to have, and it's not an innate thing. It's something that you have to develop. And you constantly have to be reminding yourself and say, okay, is this how you should react? Is this, think about it before, always talk. We even train, it's part of EI, but it's like, you don't answer immediately to an email that you receive, right? You really, and then reread it and answer it later, because the first reaction or the first way that you take it, it might not be the same if you read it, an hour or 5 hours later, even. It's like, oh, this is what they were saying.
So you each have a lens on this topic, and particularly because you're all from or have experience in the hospitality industry. I mean, that's an industry that is built upon relationships. It's built upon connection. It's built upon serving the customer. I mean, every industry has their customer focus, but I mean, the hospitality industry is based on the customer and meeting them emotionally where their needs are, meeting their needs, supporting their needs, going above and beyond, building those relationships, building trust, and creating an experience, right? I mean, each of you kind of gave voices. You're creating an experience, and there's a purpose behind this. I would love for you to kind of translate that into the modern where we're going, because this industry is shifting, right? I mean, it's gone through an upending over the last couple of years, and it's reestablishing itself, and yet the demand for connection is very, very high, obviously. And I would love to hear how each of you is navigating or working with customers who are navigating this, right now, and what that looks like. So,
well, I mean, to say that this is unique to hospitality is not correct. Every company has customers, and every company has employees. And so managers have to work with employees and, as Lindsay said, be role models so that the employees then act that same way with customers. Whether you're banking or, healthcare, just think of all of the business. Look at retail. When you walk in a retail store, sometimes people notice you and say hi and welcome, and other times they don't.
Mhm.
But those are the practices that make companies successful today. It's a very competitive world. And if we're not caring about our employees and they're not caring about our customers, there's a break in the chain there that is not going to be good. And so you got to teach managers some very basic things like look people in the eye, smile at people. When you're walking around, smile. How about if you get to know your employees' names and use their names when you're talking to them? How about if you send birthday cards to your employees? Just silly little things like that, because that's the type of communication that goes on day after day. And unless it's embedded in our actions every day, it's not going to be as effective as it could or should be.
and I don't think those things are silly, by the way, but we'll continue on this. Go ahead, Lindsay. It looks like you want to say something.
I was just going to say that I think employees emulate the experience that they receive. And
Yeah.
so ultimately, if we're looking for our employees to provide a 5-star experience to customers, clients, members, patients, whoever that may be, we have to emulate that same experience for them as leaders, as human resources, as the organization. And I think that that's really the critical role that we play. And so, I used to in healthcare say they take care of the patients and we take care of them. And then in hospitality, specifically for a country club, we have members. So it's that our employees take care of the members, but we take care of them. And that's what I see as our most important role. And so we need to make sure that we're living by that every day and we're weaving that through everything that we are doing. And also making sure that we're walking the walk, not just talking about it, not just, speaking these things, but also putting them into action and making sure that we're living by the words that we're saying, not just saying we care about employees, but we're also showing them.
I think the customer and the employees want the exact same thing. They want to have a good experience no matter what. So when the customer goes to, when the guest comes to a restaurant, to a hotel, to whatever, tourism, hospitality, they want that. They want to feel special. They want to feel that, you're meeting their expectations. They want to have a good time. And when they leave, they want to have that memory, right? Because people may not remember, oh, the bed was this color or the furniture or was this color, but it was like, I had so much fun that I'm going to go back. So one of our core values is that actually it's experience, but it's experience with the guests and our employees. We know that we know that we have some employees that are going to be here. They're going to learn, they're going to go. But even if they go, we want them when they leave, they say, I love working there. That was such a wonderful time. Or like they know somebody, let me refer you. You're going to have a great time there. So I think it's the same thing for guests and for employees. It's just part of, the expectation. And yes, like Lindsay would say, the expectation has said, the new generations are coming with a very different mentality on the older generations, but that's the same thing that happens with customer during time. We have a bigger group now that are really looking for into a sustainable state. What are you doing that is not wasted? Because the mentality of the generation has changed. They're worrying more about, that. So, some people want to wait, right? I don't want to go to the front desk. I can just check in on my phone and go straight to the room. So it's exactly the same. Cultures and generations change, and the employer and the service provider have to adapt to those changes.
So that's I'm glad you raised that, Susanna. So that's where my brain was going around this concept of whose responsibility is it, right? Was the question that was kind of emerging, right? Whose responsibility is the empathetic connection fall to? And you gave a good example because there is a different expectation, quote unquote, of when you look at these generations, right? And just that small example to your point about digital check-in, right? And already to your point, before the model was you look the guest in the eye, you greet them, you go out of your way to provide them service, to walk them to their room, to make sure that their needs have been provided for, that they any questions like that art of hospitality was part of what made the industry great. And now we've gotten to the point of efficiency and personalization, but yet that human connection could be lost, arguably, just by that small change, because now you're right. They don't have to talk to anybody. They can walk in the elevator, they can go to their room, and they can leave the hotel and not have to interact at all. And yet the expectations of what makes a great stay are evolving through that. And how do we reconcile that in your industry, but because it applies elsewhere? Because I think this goes back to this friction point, which is whose responsibility for empathy is it? Whose responsibility for creating an amazing experience is it? Where does the agreement take place between the two parties around how do we mutually support one another, right? And that applies on a customer side and an employee side. And I think this is the fine line of where this debate, I think, is happening around, is there too much empathy? Because there's an imbalance at times that's taking place, is what we're hearing, right? And so I'd love for you to share your thoughts on that.
Well, there may be a debate on how much empathy should there be between managers and employees, but you'll never hear a business leader say there's too much empathy between us and our customers. And they deal with our customers in a way that is highly empathetic, highly anticipatory, and responsive.
Yes.
And it should be no different with employees. And, you know, it's everybody's responsibility. Let's start with that premise. And so companies have to develop their programs and their processes around, we're all in this together and we all have to do this, because if a customer bumps into a very empathetic employee, they're happy. And in the next instance, they turn in, they bump into a sourpuss.
Right.
Well, then who's going to recover that from the third employee? So
Right.
everybody's in on this together. And if we don't look at it that way, I think companies are just missing a huge opportunity. Retailers are complaining like hell that
Right.
Amazon's got all the business. Well, no, they don't. Amazon has a lot of the business, but people still like to walk into a store and know that somebody knows them and cares about them, whether it's a hotel or a restaurant or a retail store. That kind of connection cannot be repeated online.
Yeah.
And even with all the systems they have for, immediate notifications and AI stuff, it's not the same as human to human.
I think companies, they spend a lot of time finding out what the customer wants. They send marketing research.
Yeah.
They do a lot of that, to make sure that they accommodate their business to the different generations or what the customer wants now. Companies should do the same thing with employees. So, everybody talks about, the voice of employee surveys and business surveys, but really ask the questions that make sense, communicate with them. Before you make a decision, we always sometimes feel like, oh, this is a great idea, we're going to implement it. And then you implement it and you have maybe 20% participation. But the reason is, well, you didn't ask, was this something that makes sense to you, to the employee? Maybe we thought it was great. And, we spent all of this, we bought all of the systems, and the employees are like, that doesn't make sense to me, or it's not something that I need right now, So I think they should spend the same time that they spend to get customers with the employees that you have, treat, the employees in a sense are what makes you continue keeping customers, right? Whether it doesn't matter what industry it is, but I think that's very important.
Yeah, and to that point, so each summer we have a large international workforce that comes in. So employees on H-2B visas mostly. And last summer, what we did was we wanted to check in with them. So we did sort of a mid-season check-in, if you will, and then we did one at the end before they either headed home or headed back to Florida. Mostly, usually would be where they would go. And it was really important for us to have those conversations in person, bring them in. It was myself and a team member and then the employee, and make sure that we had, some consistent questions so we can get feedback from each of them, but also open it up to what was important to them. How was their stay with us? The questions are very similar to what we would ask a member or a customer, and making sure that their experience with us was what they wanted and expected it to be. And I even weaved that NPS question into it. You're still able to kind of ask those questions, even in an in-person meeting with them. And we were actually surprised by the results that we got back from those conversations. And that was that ENPS score had some room to grow. There was areas of opportunity there, but also that there was consistent messaging and consistent feedback that a lot of them had to share. And so we were able to take that, bring that to our executive leadership team, and they were able to then formulate a plan to take action on it for them specifically. Honestly, the feedback that really came back was about where they lived. So they did live on site in our employee living quarters. And that was a lot of the feedback that we got was about tweaks or improvements that could be made to where they spent their time when they weren't working. And ultimately that led to a lot of improvements. So I think it's really important to take that time to actually sit and meet with the employees, have those in-person conversations, and really have that dialogue and get that sort of qualitative conversation and feedback that can really make some important results and changes. And then they ultimately see that their voices were heard.
I think, Derek, we have to somehow change this narrative. It's not about caring as much as it's about effectiveness. Ask a business leader, what are your biggest problems? The first is attendance. Terrible attendance. People don't come to, well, how engaged is the leader? How engaged are all the managers? If they're engaged and they love what they do and they convey that to their employees and they make their employees love what they do, then they'll have better attendance. Most
Yes.
people today have poor attendance because I don't care. Nobody seems to care about me, so I don't care. If I don't feel like going to work, what's the difference? And so I think let's talk about attendance. And this subject can affect that. The other one is I hear all the time, managers, I can't find good employees. I just can't find good employees. That's not the point. The point is good employees don't like you. And because the word's on the street about companies and how much they care, how much they cared or didn't care when they laid everybody off during COVID, and people were shocked to the bones about being laid off. Did they stay in touch with their employees? Did they help them through the processes of not being employed? Did they, call them every month? All of those things. And when COVID ended, the people that were fully staffed were the people who cared. And the people who are not fully staffed, even to today, are
Yes.
not caring employers. So talk to businesses about the problems that they're really having, that they don't think this topic really can impact. And the fact of the matter is, this topic can really impact those kinds of problems that people have.
Well said. So, and you kind of give voice to the next topic I was going to lead into, Artie, which is this concept. And we talked about your title, Susanna, around purpose, right? Engagement is very much tied to an employee and manager's sense of purpose and their role, whether it be performing that well or the overall mission of the organization or the serving of the client base, whatever it may be. How have you seen that in your organization? Lindsay and Susanna, you were both talking about the rebranding that you've taken place in terms of what your function is and why that is relevant. I'd love for you to talk a bit about why and how that has evolved the organization and evolved your brand, what you're doing around this topic of purpose. Because I agree, Artie, it is, when we hear about this topic of engagement or low engagement, I do believe it's connected to that purpose. And
Interestingly, Lindsay talked about rebranding, and changing the narrative. When you call people managers and supervisors, they think they're cops. They think they're McGruff, the crime dog, running around trying to catch people doing things wrong. And I have several clients who have changed that title of manager to coach, because that puts a different mindset to it. A manager is a coach first and foremost, and they're a cop last. Don't even think about that. So I think we've got to start to really rebrand things that we do and say at work to get people to think about, I'm helping these other people to get where they want to go, rather than I'm supposed to catch them when they're doing something wrong.
speaking
Yeah, that's amazing.
Go ahead, Lindsay. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think to Artie's point too, it's managers are always operating from a defense, everything has this negative connotation, corrective action, disciplinary action. I think even performance management, there's room to really rebrand all of that, and just changing that nomenclature sends a completely different message to employees and team members in terms of how we view those things and how we treat them. And so, yeah, when I started my role at the country club where I've just been, right when I started, we rebranded to people and culture. And so it was that really important shift, getting away from human resources. I think, we're at this inflection point in the profession where it's time to rebrand. And there's a few different iterations of that, as we see here today in Susanna's role and in other organizations. So we did people and culture. And really the main message was that we are people. That's who we are. And that's what my team is sort of responsible for, is as our people, and making sure that we have a positive culture where everyone wants to come to work and has a great experience. We're not headcount, we're not employees, we're not human capital, even not numbers on a spreadsheet. And so it really started with that messaging and getting that out, so that we are all humans, we are all people, and we're going to operate from a human-centered approach in everything that we do. And then that just really sort of catapulted into all of the things that I did, and really wanted to make sure was emulated in the experience that we were providing. We're not just here to push paper, process payroll. We're really here for so much more than that. And that's really to engage the employees along the way. And that's through all different aspects of what we did as a team. And so I think that, there's some arguments out there even about the rebrands of HR that you'll see. Well, everyone's responsible for culture and everyone's responsible for purpose and everyone's responsible for well-being. And exactly that. We are all responsible for everything that we do. So I don't think it's a reason to not rebrand and to not do that. I think that it sends an important message. And for me, when I try to talk to employees, and even on things like this, I do say employees, but I really try to refer to them as team members. And I really tried to do that in my last organization, because that's what we are. We're a team. We want to be a team providing service to the members and to working together, but also with one another. I really wanted everyone to really feel like they were more than just that employee or associate.
I'm going to go down a line here in a few minutes on this topic. But I want to go to Susanna first. So.
Well, yeah, we also rebranded. We're not human resources anymore. We are talent and purpose, because our team members are the talent of the company. We hire talent. We're not talent acquisition, because you don't acquire people. There's not things that you that you buy or purchase. And we also eliminated the word asset to any even offer letters. People are not they're not assets. They're part of the company. But in regards was like, we manage talent, but everything that we do within our department and within the company has a purpose behind it. So, we did created a social purpose and responsibility position because of that sense, to help us to track more of that beyond just the human resources part. Human resources always been seen to as like the police keepers, the policy, like, oh, human resources come in, or you got to go to human resources. Everybody's like, oh, what did you do? Or everybody's, so we wanted to change that mentality, because in reality, our department has never been that. And I've always considered that, we are those that help develop culture. We make sure we are the onboarding, right? We're the first. Our department is the first contact many times that a new hire has with the company. So we need to make sure that we change that, okay, just fill out this paper. No, it has to be an experience from the moment that we contact them until the moment they start and then they continue working. So that has been the change for us when it came to, to talent and purpose, making sure also we try to make sure that we create that as their team members. Whenever we hire, managers again, the titles are managers, but we consider them leaders. So all the employees understand of the leadership, your leadership team, It's like leader is a lot bigger. You follow a leader. A manager tells you what to do. A leader, you want to follow where you want to go. So it's trying to change that, structure, that mentality, that culture. And it has, I think it has had positive changes. One thing that I know all of our employees know is like they can call me directly or email the CEO directly. There is no, okay, no, I need to go to this person first or to this person. If they feel comfortable enough, they should be able to go to to anybody if there is an issue.
Completely agree with that. And so to that point, each of you kind of has said this a couple times now. Managers, HR, reputation as being the police, the enforcers, right? The correctors. And what you're really saying is HR and managers are the advocates, the helpers, the coaches, right? That's really what we're talking about. And I say that because it's beyond just this functional area, right? In a world of where we were before of hierarchical organizations, right? Where we had tasks, right, that had to be completed. It was different. We're technologically able to do 1,000 times more tasks than we've ever were before, not that long ago. The entirety of what makes business special, right, in my opinion, business special, is that human element, the creativity, the purpose, the connection, the relational aspects. And if anything, I believe we should be infusing more of this into the organizations, right? That this is the true essence of what is the business of the future, and why there's this breakage taking place between the generations, to your point, Artie, is because we're in this process of creating a new way, right? And if anything, COVID was the catalyst for that. And there's a lot of just moving pieces that are going around this right now. But I think that ultimately this role of equipping talent, equipping people, equipping this skill set is where we need to move. Anything you could argue that the role for HR needs to be increased. And I don't say HR, the role that HR has been playing needs to be increased and needs to be multiplied within companies, right? So if anything, there should be many, many more roles, not less roles, for these people in companies to connect, to be advocates, to be helpers, to be coaches, because we still know that there's so many people that don't have the skills. And so the only way that we're going to teach that and to have that is to provide it. And so that's just my little rant here, but it's important, I feel, to get us out, because we've been very functional and tactical on a lot of this stuff, but we're getting to the heart of it, which is this point where we're going towards a new way, which is, what is the true role of people and culture? It's not just about managing tasks. It's not about just getting stuff done. That we have the ability. It's about meeting people, supporting them, advocating, elevating them, right? And yeah. So anyway, we'll have to hear you all carry the baton on that, but that's just my rant on this topic for the day.
No,
Well,
definitely the
Eric.
support system, definitely the support behind it, definitely support to the company. You know, besides all of the tasks that we have to do, but we definitely think we have elevated, you know, ourselves to more than that. You know, it's more intrinsic, it's more people, it's more communicative too. Having that communication and that relationship is really important.
Well, I think this group in particular, knowing that you're all in the space of creating environments, creating experiences where people can be their best selves, have fun, feel inspired, feel alive, feel that purpose, feel that connection. I mean, that's what you all have dedicated your lives and your careers to. I mean, the collective culture, collective population of workplace and leisure is starving for it, right? I mean, like this whole concept of where do we work and where do we play, where do we convene, and where do we socialize? Like, this is all being reevaluated right now. I mean, like, it's just at the moment of where we are in the business world. I mean, you have city centers that are vacant, right? And people are saying, where do we find our people? Like, this is the question of the zeitgeist in workplace right now. And you all have the inside track, I believe, on creating those answers, creating that kind of environment. So yeah, anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
So several of us said that, it's everybody's responsibility and HR has to get out there and lead people. I think there's a topic for managers or coaches to be trained on, which is HR for the non-HR manager.
Yes.
And so if we can train all of our managers and supervisors, whatever we call them, on the basic tenets of our role in HR, and it really does boil down to caring in many ways. And so in my practice, I work with companies and we do mission, vision, value statements, or mission, vision, purpose statements, and they like it, and they put a lot of effort into it. And I worry then that those things just end up on the wall someplace or in a binder. And so what I've started to do is to put mission and vision to work. And so you challenge managers, if one of your values is caring, then how are you going to put caring in the job posting? How are you going to put caring in the job interview? How are you going to put caring in the job offer? How are you going to put caring in onboarding, in orientation, in job training? And all of the things that managers have to do, you just show them the way, give them a guideline here, and make it part of their job. And then you have to tell them, what are the results of caring? So build that right into their job description. What are the results we want to create and you're expected to create, which could be lower turnover, lower absenteeism, greater retention, employee satisfaction. Managers in any department are responsible for all of those things, and we've just got to show them the way.
To Artie's point, in a prior organization, we took our values and put them in our performance review. So we revamped the performance review and actually made that the first section. And employees did a self-evaluation as well. So both the employee and the manager were actually rating on those values as one element of that performance review. And I think that whole process in general is a key way that we all play a role in terms of employees having purpose and finding that purpose. Derek, you talked about the pandemic, and I think that everyone talks about the Great Resignation, but what really happened before that was the Great Reflection. And that's what everyone really started to do, was reflect on what they were doing, where they were working, how they were spending their time. For me, that's sort of the thing that's in my heart recently is, how am I spending my time? How are we spending our time? And I think that when people really focus on that question and what that means for each person, which means different things to everyone, I think that that will really propel us forward in terms of what we do as people leaders, what we do as leaders of teams, what we do as organizations, is how do team members, employees want to spend their time, and how can we give them meaning and purpose in what they do that makes sense for them, and then weave that into the processes that we have that help us do that, in terms of reviews and feedback and all of those elements.
That question is the question I ask myself every day, right? In terms of how we show up for our people, Lindsay, truly. I mean, I think that is one of the primary questions we need to be asking right now, and creating the environment for that. And so that kind of transitions nicely to you, Suzanne, on a question you mentioned early on. The B Corp certification that Legacy has gone through and continues to go through. Tell us a bit about that process and how that has influenced you, your culture, what you're doing in that way, because I think it really aligns well with putting this into action. And I know it helps to there's a momentum behind it, I believe, as a result of doing this, that I think could be helpful for you to share with the community here.
So I mean, the B Corp certification, it's a certification that you go through the B Lab, and it's I mean, it's separated in different areas: the environment, the employee, the governance, and the community. And it is how your company SOPs in reality and operations matches what it's supposed to be, or what they consider a good company. So you have to go through the questionnaire and go through the BIA, which is the B assessment. And the first time we went through that, we realized, okay, we're not that far. Like, we're doing a lot of this, but what it really forces you to make it happen really. Like, this is, if you might be there, you might be doing something, but are you really? Like, is it a structure? Is it embedded in your culture? Is it something that all of your leadership understands and follow? So the environment, I mean, that's one of the biggest things, and it's part of what it's embedded to in our core values. One of them is, people-centric, which is like every decision we make, the person is at the heart of the decision. And when we talk about person, we're talking about our stakeholders or community, the people around us. So, if it forces you to do business with local businesses, so that's the way that you're going to develop your community, bringing it over. And, sometimes we think about the cheapest and the fastest, but that's not necessarily the best decision. It doesn't help the environment. So it really brings you down to, like, everything you do, it involves with the whole part of it is, in reality, at the end, it's the person, the people, improve the world, improve the environment, do all of the changes because you care. There's a lot of involvement in it, but what has that transcended is to us to really look at what you're doing, how you're doing, and if that is that something that you're proud of, that makes you, is that something that makes you happy to say, yeah, this is who I am, this is where I work, and I work at this company, and this is what we're doing. The volunteering program that we have, that we pay for volunteering, and we push volunteering for everybody to go and volunteer and help out the community. We make sure that, besides the training, but I think the volunteer is the biggest thing. When we started with that, people like, what do you mean you're going to pay me? I said, you can pick any day you want to volunteer, you go and we'll pay you for the time. We do a lot of donations, but it's I guess created in that culture. We even have it in the own when you talk about the onboarding, if you apply, the first thing we do is tell you what our core values are, because we want to make sure that if you're applying here, we match what you want, your own ideals, your own values, because this is where you're going to come. You're going to come to a company that this is what we do. And then, paying employees, that's one of the biggest things that we look into the living wage. Living wage is totally different than, the minimum wage or the, cost of living wage, the living wage. So that is something that we really, as a hospitality, sometimes it has to, when we decided, we really consider this is a big intake and we're going to have to, be part of it. But all of that in reality, it has make us stronger when it comes to our culture, our beliefs. We just finished a survey, and I love when all of the employees understood why we were environmental, why we, one of the questions like, do you feel that we're actually following this core value? Because that's what we want to do. We say we have these core values, but are we walking the walk, and to hear them say, saying yes, and I understand why. Do we motivate you? I mean, that's one of our questions. You feel motivated to work for us, the onboarding, part of the onboarding is that we have a 2-week check-ins with the new hires, a month check-ins with the new hires, at 3 months. We do state interviews. So we're constantly, because we are spread out. We're not in just one location. We have 4 different states. So we want to make sure that everybody feels, included, part of one big, company. So I don't know if I'm going off, the tangent here, but it is very important for us, because the B Corp it's a big certification, and we need to make sure that we know why. I think that's one of the biggest things when we started, was like, our employees need to know why we're doing it.
And I think and thank you for summarizing that so well. And thank you for sharing that story and that journey that you're on. Because I think it goes back to that question I've had a colleague share in the past, the question you have to ask yourself at the start of the day: am I doing the right things? Or are we doing the right things? Right. That needs to be the person, and back to alignment with your values, back to alignment with your mission. Are we doing the right thing to serve our people, to serve our customers, to serve our mission? And then the question is, are we doing those things right? Right. I mean, about how do you execute? Because you have to know where and why you're going that direction, and then you can execute and perform. Back to that concept that you gave voice to around coaching people, Artie, and how we develop people and really get there. So I could tell it looks like you want to chime in, so I'll give you a chance, Artie, to share your thoughts, and you as well, Lindsay. We're getting close to the wrapping up the hour here, but any closing thoughts from either of you, and you too, Susanna, please share them here.
Well, it's interesting to hear people talking about catching people doing things right and explaining why. That shows you really care. But I'll end with this story. When I first started in gaming industry, I came out of manufacturing, rough and tumble. And I asked my boss, what's my title going to be? I wanted to be, a vice president, a director or something. And he looks at me and he goes, your title's going to be daddy. I said, what? He goes, yeah, I think that mommies and daddies know how to treat their children. And we need our managers and supervisors to think about treating their employees the way parents treat their children. They care all the time. They have to tell them when they're wrong, but they have to always love them. And there's just a whole litany of those things. And I thought that was, just an interesting comment from him. And I went away thinking, well, he'll forget about that. I don't know. But I get to work 2 weeks later, and I get to my desk, and there's a box of cards, and I open them up, and the box says, Artie Nathan, Daddy. And it set the tone for me and my career in HR in that business for 30 years. And I'm still proud of being somebody who thinks like that.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that story. Definitely hits my heart for sure. So, Lindsay, Susanna, any closing thoughts from either of you?
I did hear already say, kind of in how I'll say it is celebrating the wins. So I think that, it's important to find ways to celebrate our employees and our team members. And, that could be just so simple as having a conversation with them and giving them some of your time. And then when there's achievements and accomplishments along the way, one of the things I kind of wanted to end it with, it's what personally fills my cup, is that I've had employees in my, most recent role just stop by my office. Can I talk to you? and they just wanted some of my time, and they wanted help to one was she was finishing her degree and was going to a conference and just basically wanted some mentorship and wanted help in terms of how could she maximize that experience and approach her job search and her career in a meaningful way. And then the other one was someone who was interested in just how can I learn? How can I take some training courses and advance myself? And that's what made me, as sort of an HR people leader, just kind of really proud that I, for some reason, made them feel comfortable, that they wanted to come and talk to me and confide in me about that. And they felt that I could help them in some way. So it's those little moments too that we have to find, that I think really solidify and put into concrete that we're doing the right things and making a difference.
Love that. Thank you.
I just, I guess, talking, in relevance with, culture, leadership with empathy is like, we need to always remind ourselves and not ever forget that your team members or employees are people, their mothers, their fathers, their sons, their daughters. They have a life, they have, a family, and just the privilege that they have chose you as a company to work for, it should just really immediately change, how you view, the way that you want to provide experience for them.
Well, as always, blown away by the brilliance and the heartfulness of this audience, of this group of speakers here. And thank you to our audience for being here. And thank you to each of you for being rebels of the heart in your lives and your work. And just honored for you all joining us today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.